Hi, this is Michelle, and today Carrie and I are going to be talking about spiritual growth. Let's get started. So today we're going to talk about spiritual growth. I know this is a subject that everybody loves and they're always interested on how they can evolve spiritually. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Now, Carrie, I know that you had some input here. You were talking about a book, was it?
Yeah. So I think folks who are interested in studying magic may have heard of Damien Eccles. He's written several books on magic. One is called High Magic, and he comes from a similar esoteric tradition. And one thing that struck me in his book is that he talks about the usefulness of magic for practical or more mundane purposes. He grew up in poverty, and he knows how important it is to be able to, take care of your material needs, but then also the use of magic for that spiritual growth. And I sometimes worry that my own practice is out of balance. And like his recommendation is, okay, maybe 10 to 20% of the time you focus on like a mundane desire, and then the rest of the time you focus on your spiritual growth. And this is often considered like what your purpose is going to be, like working out what you're meant to be doing. And I'm wondering what practices would be best to spend more time doing. I've learned a lot in our order about creating magic for things that I want. And we've talked about how successful many of these magical practices are for manifestation. But I feel like I'm out of balance and want to spend some time focusing on the spiritual growth side of magic, if that makes sense.
I guess it's important to kind of really define what that means, though. From my perspective, I'll tell you mine and then you can tell me yours. But
Okay.
my perspective of spiritual growth is to evolve into a state where you are connected to your higher self and that you are completely living out your purpose, what you were designed to do. The goal is to come to a space, like a lot of people say, Christ-like. You're wanting to get into the ultimate space of that Zen space of living and enjoying and loving and being. And I think that, like if you've ever studied like the Tao Te Ching, it talks about a lot of things that you can do to evolve into that space. And ultimately, spiritual growth is really defined differently by different people, because some people feel like it's to be a better Christian. Some people it's to be masterful in manifesting. But for me, I see it as self-development and to be not affected by the challenges that we have in our life. Like what we're doing is we're working through different things like getting grounded, learning to step into the space of, creativity and really paying attention to, our thoughts and making sure they're clear and more purposeful, taking action on the things that is more divine purpose, connecting with our spirit guides so that they can help us with making those decisions that are divine. And it really kind of comes down to living our best life and being happy. I landed on this YouTube channel and this guy was saying, spiritualism or becoming spiritual, he goes, it comes down to just one thing. He goes, being happy, because that's all everybody wants. But how do you get there? It's like everybody gets there a little bit different. To be happy, we have to be doing things that makes us happy. We have to have people around us that support us. And we need to be doing something that is fulfilling in our life, that gives us a sense of purpose. We need to be accepting the things that come in front of us, those challenges, as a means of growth, and looking at it from a different perspective. Like, what did I learn from this versus why did this happen to me? I had a challenge about a little over a year ago, and it set me back. Like, I would say I sort of like stepped back spiritually. Actually, it affected my manifesting. It affected the way that I dealt with everything, the stress and everything in my life. It was like I kind of like fell backwards. And I was talking to my proctor about it recently, and I said, when I was talking to one of the higher up proctors, she said that if you get a handle on it and you become proactive with this, the universe will bring it back up again in a different form, but the same lesson will come up. But if you're proactive in it and learning, that it's not going to hit you the same way. So when I was talking to him, I said, this is what I'm concerned about, and this is what I want to evolve from, is to learn from that and be proactive in a way that it's not going to affect me the next time it comes around. And he basically said, just the fact that you're talking to me and you're saying those words, he goes, you already are being proactive because you're aware. It becomes an issue of awareness, being aware of when it hits you, because before you weren't aware. It hit you and affected you. Because now you're aware. You know that when it shows up, you're going to be looking at this differently, and you're going to have all the tools in hand because you learned from it. You see what I'm saying? So if we can look at life as a learning experience and we learn from it, we're evolving spiritually. And it's really like kind of a walk of self-development, and the best way that we can do that is to connect to God, our higher self, the I am presence, the divine. If we do that, then we're experiencing the energies from ultimate love, and our perception or our filter that we're using can shift. But what I see that happens with a lot of people that are more religious, they don't see it from that angle. They see it as go to church, read my Bible, get saved, get baptized, take confirmation, whatever it is that they need to do. They go through the steps, but they don't go through the emotional alchemy or the spiritual alchemy that needs to actually be transmuted into the soul. Does that make sense? So what are your thoughts? And that's just me,
No, that absolutely makes sense. And I do believe one of the great advantages that I've gained from this practice is that ability to control how I react to situations in a way that I was not able to prior, right? That sense of equanimity that comes with the magical practice. I guess where I get stuck with the magic, and we talked a lot about this in the manifestation because it keeps coming up again about, if I'm manifesting for myself, is that okay? And sometimes I worry about ego getting in the way. If like I want something, do I want that thing because it supports my spiritual growth, because it brings me closer to my higher self? Or do I want it because of that ego? And I've had this happen where there's been something I wanted. For example, I applied for a grant and I used magic to help get the grant, and I got the grant, and it ended up being a huge pain in the ass. And really the reason I wanted the grant was for my ego. So I could like put it on, my CV that I got this thing. It wasn't anything to fulfill my higher purpose. It wasn't something that I even, necessarily really wanted to be working on. And this is where I think I still have struggles and work to do, like separating, is this thing that I'm wanting useful to my growth, or do I just want it for purposes of ego?
Well, it's a good question, but I have a question for you. Did you learn from it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so then it is for your higher purpose, because if you can take that example and learn from it, then the answer is yes. And if you would have, like we did the divination thing, if you did the divination but before that and it said yes, then it's probably telling you yes because why? Because you're going to learn something from this, and that is something that you take with you. So I can see this as a very positive thing if you look at it from that angle. If you say, I'm going to do this, but I'm also going to do this so that I can learn from this. You know, whether it turns out the way I want or it doesn't turn out the way I want, this is something I'm feeling called to do. So what is your heart saying? You're like, I want this, so you go for it, and then you learn from it. Or you want this, you go for it, and it turns out amazing. Either way, it's helping you grow, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's an excellent way of looking at it. Yeah, I did definitely take a lesson. Sometimes, you know, my husband and I talk about learning things. We'll often say like lesson identified rather than lesson learned, because you know you can identify the lesson, but have you learned it? When you keep, you know, if you make the same mistake over and over again, you haven't learned it. You've only identified. So hopefully this will be a lesson learned. But when it comes to these spiritual practices, you know, when I first started doing this work, as I've mentioned before, I'm a very good student, and you know, I'm good at following instructions and memorizing things and doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I found by doing this work, it yielded great results. The results so great that surprised me, surprised my husband. Like I've changed, and now that I feel like I've gotten a bit more advanced in the practice. Like I worry, like, well, is just kind of following these steps going to do anything? Is there something more I need to be doing? How can I ensure that I continue to grow and I don't stagnate in the practice?
Well, it doesn't sound like you're stagnating.
Oh, I hope not. I worry. It's like, oh, you know, if
You know, I've often asked the same question. You know, is this ego? A lot of times, the answer that has been given to me is it helping you? You know, is it helping you? And if it is helping you, how is it helping you? And is it helping other people? And ultimately, the more powerful that we become, the more, let me see if I can think of what the words are, the more you're held up to a higher accountability. You know, I read this book once, and it's called God Speaks. And this particular, I think his the name is Baba something. You know, they have those titles like Maharaji and Baba and something like that. So anyway, he didn't talk for like a long time, 10, 20 years. And then when he finally spoke, he wrote this book. And he was talking about the powers and that you gain more, that you learn about, you know, what you can do, like all these magical practices and stuff. You're held to a higher accountability. It's one thing to be able to know how to do it. It's another to know how to do it and use it for the best reasons. And when you're asking yourself this question, I would say, how is it going to help you? And how is it going to serve others? So let's say hypothetically the grant. If you ask yourself, how is it going to help others? What would the answer be?
It was a grant that I was encouraged to apply for by a colleague of mine who wanted the opportunity to work with students on a project. So in the end, we did get to do some work with students. Everybody was pleased. It gave us some new ideas moving forward, stuff we want to do in the future. So there were some positives that came out of it for sure.
And it helped other people, like the students, right?
Yep. I helped the students, helped my colleague.
So overall, it was a positive thing, even though it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it is a bit of extra work to do some of those things, you know, but it's kind of like what we're doing. We spend all these hours and we're creating these podcasts, and then it has to be edited, and then it has to be downloaded, and then I have to advertise it, and then, okay, is that a pain in the ass?
Yeah.
You can look at it like that, but you can also say, how is it serving somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's a question on I want to win the lotto, and I want to win the lotto because I'm lazy and I don't want to work, or I'm not going to do anything with it, or I'm just going to be all self-serving, and I'm just going to become arrogant and all this other stuff. Or, I knew somebody who started off very spiritual and very caring and loving and giving, and gave a lot to people, just gave of herself, gave of her time. But she kept on wanting more power, more power, more power, more power, more power. And eventually she got all of that, millions and millions of dollars, but she stopped serving others. She was only self-serving. And the actions that she was taking was hurting other people, but she didn't care. You see the difference?
Yeah.
So just because you gain the power of something, it's a matter of what are you going to do with that. You are one of the most caring individuals I've ever met. So I don't see that you could ever potentially have something inside of you that would be really self-serving as much as it is about what can you do with it. I mean, if you have a grant that's going to do something, then yeah, I mean, it's helping your students, it's helping other people grow and learn and, gain something out of it. I see it as a positive thing. Just because it was a pain in the ass doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't positive. It just means that it was a lot of work that you learned from, and you're like, you know what? Maybe I can
not apply for it again next year.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, maybe a different thing, maybe something else. Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to spiritual growth, I think there's a lot of misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Religion, it takes away from the God aspect and goes into it's about the church or what you're doing, and it's not about your own personal spiritual growth and your connection to the divine. Ultimately, to grow spiritually is to build that relationship with the divine and your connection with your higher self. I mean, do you agree?
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, absolutely. I like how simply that's put. Sometimes I think I forget that, maybe it is simpler than I think. So sometimes I make things more complicated than they need to be.
When you have that relationship, it goes even bigger than that, then it becomes the embodiment of it. I mean, because the ultimate goal, if you think of the teachings of Christ, he's basically teaching people how to be like him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, follow me, follow my instructions, do as I say. Here's how you do it, and he's showing you how. And, and back then in those days, those people didn't really have a lot of direction or rules. And a lot of them were impoverished and enslaved and struggled. And he's over here, showing a different way. And so he's showing them that you don't have to use anger as a result. And he's showing them that if you trust, then those things will end up showing up for you. And he's basically gives that pathway of what it looks like of living a happy life and being a good person. But if your heart's in the wrong space and you're doing it because you're wanting that free ticket to heaven, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I mean, and that's always been a big thorn in my side.
Mm-hmm.
It's I want that free ticket to heaven. Why are you doing this? Because I don't want to go to hell. Well, let's just take hell out of the equation. Let's just say hell doesn't exist. Now, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Would you do it if we take hell out of the equation? And that was always my thing. So I took hell out of the equation, and I said it doesn't exist in my perception and my belief structure.
Yeah.
So I took it out. Then I asked myself, why am I doing this? Because I believe in the divine and I believe in humanity, and I want humanity to be better. I
Mm-hmm.
want the earth to be better. I want the universe to be better. And I think that if more people were about serving others, then collectively we would all be better.
Mm-hmm.
Different, but better. But
Yeah.
and your purpose could be anything. It could be, owning a flower shop. And I mean that could be wonderful because you're offering beautiful things for people to experience happiness, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you're offering gifts to people, like an opportunity for somebody to give something and serve somebody in some manner. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you could be a vet. You're helping heal animals. You can be an accountant because you're helping people manage their money. You're still serving people. Do you
Yeah,
see?
absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. I mean,
Well, those are the thoughts that I definitely needed to hear today. So I appreciate them.
I feel like that sometimes, like these podcasts are helping Carrie get better.
Yeah. I know, a little bit selfish. Like, oh, what can Michelle help me with today?
No, I think that you are such a growth oriented person that you truly desire to grow, that you offer a lot of questions that you want to utilize yourself. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Don't be mistaken. I ask my proctor lots of questions. I get very vulnerable in that space because ultimately I do want to be the best version of myself. I mean, look, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always growing. I mean, it's like, this can't be it. I couldn't have just reached the highest level. Like, there's got to be more, right?
Yeah.
So what other questions do you have about, like, or whatever, what are your thoughts? I mean, like, I told you what I believe spiritual growth is. What was your thoughts on, like, what you think spiritual growth is?
I feel like I have the same feelings of that spiritual growth is moving closer to your best self. Spiritual growth is, moving closer to the divine, becoming more connected to the divine. And for me, the question is, well, how do I make that happen? Like, I want a problem is I want a recipe, right? I want an instruction.
That's
I
the
want
science. That's the scientist in you.
right. I want to okay, step 1, do this meditation. Step 2, say this prayer, and then move forward. But I think it's at once incredibly simple and incredibly complicated. It's just a strange place where I'm at this moment, at this particular moment, thinking about spiritual growth and making sure, changes that I want to make in the new year, how much of them are for spiritual growth and how much of them are for ego. And am I wise enough at this point to know the difference?
I think you are wise enough.
Oh, thank you. I hope so.
When you start to question things like that, I think that, like, you're like, is that my ego? Then obviously you're on the right path.
Mm,
The person that is ego driven is not going to ask that question.
that is a really good point. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
If I say that you need to forgive this person and you say, I'm not ready for that, or I can't, versus I want to, I just don't know how, and you're striving to try to figure out how, then that's working towards the spiritual growth, as opposed to a person that doesn't do the forgiveness thing. They're just like,
No.
it's
Yeah.
not that easy. I was having a conversation with somebody that is close to me, and they were complaining. And I said, well, you got to let it go, and you need to forgive and move forward in this, because this person doesn't have that kind of intent. And she said, it's not that easy. That was her response. Okay, so that's not spiritual growth. A person that is intentionally trying to grow spiritually is because they're becoming more connected to their higher self, or becoming more Christ-like, or becoming more God-like. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And if you can view it from that angle, and you can say to yourself, is that something that serves me and serves others? Am I just holding on to anger? Am I going to hold on to resentment? And that's not spiritual. That's not growth.
Right. Hurts yourself in the end.
Right. And I don't see any elements of any of that kind of stuff in you. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. And I definitely appreciate the conversation. I needed it today, for sure.
Well, everything that I know about you, you're just like one of these most beautiful souls I've ever met in my life. So I think, so some tools you were asking, like, what can we do? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that is one of the most powerful things that you can do is meditate. That if you can learn to clear your mind and all the chatter that goes on in your mind, you can calm down the subconscious reactions, those programmed responses into your being. And I think that is a really good step towards that. Also, prayer and invoking God into you, allowing that spirit to sit in you. And if you don't know how, you're just like, God, come in me and sit in here, like, and come into me and help me, Also, too, learning to chant the names of God, I think, is important instead of using the wrong way. So a lot of people say Yahweh. Some people spell it YHWH, which is actually YHVH. So it's Yod Hey Bob Hey. So they think it's Yod Hey Way Hey, which is where they get the Yahweh. And so, like, you're still not making that complete connection. And sometimes just sitting there and chanting that, or even taking some of the names, like, and do some research in the Bible, look up some of the names of God, like Adonai, taking that and just chanting that, over and over and over again. It actually invokes that name of God inside of you. And just imagine it like coming into you, like coming into your crown chakra and sitting in that space, and just clear your mind, do something like that. I think these are really good steps to invoke that energy onto you. Meditation and prayer and invoking the energy of God. I think those are some really good steps to move towards that.
I agree.
And then you start working on your own, like, mindset. Mindset is a huge thing. Hiring a life coach to help you with the mindset to get outside of the negative is a really good space to be in, because most of your life coaches are trained to teach you how to get outside of the negative mindset. So when you do that, then it opens up the possibility of spiritual growth. Because it's very difficult to grow spiritually when you're in a negative mindset. You're really kind of like sort of empowering the negativity around you, and you can't grow spiritually when that happens. Hopefully, I know this is a little bit of a shorter podcast, but hopefully that helps you guys with some spiritual growth, and we will see you on the next podcast. Hi, this is Michelle, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for engaging in this podcast and taking this journey with us where we are raising your consciousness. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram and on Facebook so that you can actually engage with us, ask us questions, offer some suggestions, or anything that you would be willing to, throw out there for us. We want to engage with our public. We look forward to hearing back from you and starting this journey. See you next time.